Hello class, and welcome to a new analysis of Spring by Philip Larkin. So this is a short poem by Philip Larkin published in 1951 and then included in the Less Deceived, a collection published in 1955. On the surface, it describes a pleasant spring day in the park, but its real subject is the speaker himself, who feels excluded from all this fertility and life. Its main themes are fertility against sterility and the position of the outsider, who cannot join the season but sees it more clearly than anyone else. Before we look at the stanza, let us pause on the title. The title is a single noun, spring, with no article. This absence of article generalizes the season into its purest and most abstract form. It is not the spring of one particular year, but the spring itself as an idea. The word also carries heavy symbolism: renewal, fertility, and new life. Larkin invokes the whole poetic tradition in one word. Now let's move on to the first stanza. As always, I'll give you a moment to read the stanza and form your own opinion before I begin my own analysis. As you have read, this stanza paints a lively and sunlit park scene, full of families, children, dogs, and light. It ends, however, with the speaker walking through it, describing himself as something barren that spring cannot absorb. The stanza opens with the compound adjective green-shadowed. It compresses light and color into a single word and a single image. The people sitting under the trees are tinted by the leaves above them. Notice that the people are colored by spring rather than acting in it. From the very first words, this introduces the theme of nature's power over humans who are passive. Next, we have symbolism. The people walk in rings, and this circular movement is symbolic. Rings suggest repetition, enclosure, and aimlessness. The park visitors move without direction or progress. Beneath the pleasant surface, human activity is already framed as circular and slightly futile. Then we find personification in the awakened grass. The grass is personified as waking from winter sleep. Nature is alive and active, while the humans merely sit or circle. Notice too that the cloud is also personified. It stands calmly like a figure at rest. The children finger the living grass is an image of contact with the natural world, a contact that the adult speaker Larkin will lack. Line 3 gives us an anaphora. Calmly a cloud stands, calmly a bird sings. The repeated adverb creates a balanced and serene rhythm. Next we have a simile. The sunlight flashes like a dangled-looking glass. So by saying a glass, Larkin is referring to a mirror which is dangled on a string. This is a bright, playful, and almost childish image to compare the sun, but think about what else a mirror does. A mirror reflects, and the simile hints that this whole scene will function as a mirror for the speaker. The scene will mirror not what the speaker is, but what he is not. In line 5, listen to the sounds. The balls that bounce, the dogs that bark. This is plosive alliteration. The repeated B plosives are percussive and energetic, imitating the thud of balls and the bark of dogs. But these sunlit items also form an enumeration. The sun lights a list of things one by one. The balls, the dogs, the mist of the leaf, and then, unexpectedly, me. So the sun shines light on the speaker's character and on his identity. The speaker files himself into the list as if he were just another object in the park. Then we look at how the speaker moves, threading my pursed up way across the park. The metaphor of threading presents the speaker as a needle picking a thin, careful line through the park. Threading is deliberate and solitary. It is clear here that his movement through spring is an act of avoidance rather than participation. It is so telling that he is being very, very careful where he goes and what he does. Finally, the stanza ends with an apposition. an indigestible sterility. Larkin renames himself me. The abstract noun sterility is the thematic core of the poem. He is barren where spring is fertile. And indigestible makes the idea biological and physical. Spring, which absorbs and transforms everything, cannot digest him. So it is obvious that the speaker is an outsider, an outcast in spring. He doesn't feel welcome and at ease. He feels awkward. Now let's move on to the second stanza. As always, please pause the video, read the stanza for yourself before I tell you my own interpretation. So as you have read, this short stanza is a compact definition of spring, the most freely given of seasons, made of wild flowers and rushing water, Earth's liveliest and most abundant child. So it opens with the double entendre gratuitous. Gratuitous holds two meanings at once. It means something that is freely given, generous, and costing nothing, but it also means something unnecessary, unearned, excessive. This duality carries the speaker's divided attitude. Spring sure is a free gift, yet from the perspective of a sterile observer, it is also pointless abundance. The doubleness is sharpened by the superlative most gratuitous. This superlative really reinforces the duality of spring, pushes both meanings of the word to their extreme. Then comes the anaphora. Is fold of untaught flower, is a race of water, is Earth's most multiple excited daughter. The triple repetition of is at the head of successive clauses forms an anaphora. Spring is defined 3 times in a rising sequence, from flower to water to the whole earth. The insistent present tense gives spring pure and undeniable existence. And within that list, notice the word play in race of water. Race is a play on 2 senses, the rushing current of a stream and a race as a breed or lineage. Spring is both speed, the speed of a current, but also reproduction in a single word. This wordplay associates spring with both fertility and energy, which are exactly the 2 qualities the speaker lacks. And the stanza reaches its climax with this personification, which might even be an allegory. Multiple suggests endless reproduction and abundance, whilst excited suggests uncontainable energy. And daughter makes fertility literal through the family metaphor. Spring is now an allegory, a character, a she. Now let's move on to the final stanza. Please pause the video and read it for yourself before I present my own analysis. So this stanza really delivers the poem's conclusion. Those whom spring has no use for, sterile outsiders like the speaker, are precisely the ones who see it more clearly. The whole argument of the stanza compresses into the initial paradox. The whole argument of the poem compresses in the initial paradox, and those she has least use for see her best. Spring has no biological use for the sterile. Spring usually gives people an increased amount of hormones, but for the sterile, that is pointless. But despite this, sterile people perceive her, so spring, the most clearly. Participation in something blurs vision. Exclusion sharpens it. It is when we are outside of something that we have the best perspective of it. The lovers and children inside the season cannot see the spring, but the outsider can. Then look at the diction of line 2, craven and circuitous. Craven suggests the cowardly path the speaker is taking. Sterile people seem to be timid and self-protective, as though they are unable to face spring's openness directly. Circuitous means indirect or roundabout, so it once again suggests hesitation, avoidance, and a lack of straightforwardness. And this is an allusion to the earlier Notice also that circuitous loops back to the people who walk in rings. And the rest of the stanza is also organized by anaphora. The triple there builds a parallel inventory of the excluded. Their paths, their visions, and their needs are separate to those of people who can enjoy and appreciate and embrace spring. This obviously mirrors the anaphora in stanza 2. Whilst the anaphora in stanza 2 with the repeated is described spring, this second anaphora describes the outsiders who are not able to enjoy it. Within this inventory, the compound adjective mountain clear gives the outsiders' vision the clarity of thin mountain air. Height implies perspective, but also isolation. And this image really dignifies and sort of enhances exclusion. What the sterile lose in belonging, they obviously can't enjoy spring, they gain in sight, in perspective, in knowledge. And finally, we have diction again in immodest. The excluded may live timidly, but their desires are enormous. Sterility of life does not mean absence and sterility of longing. And on that note, before we conclude, let us step back and look at the poem's structure, form, and rhythm. In terms of structure, the poem moves in 3 stages: an external scene in stanza 1, a definition of spring in stanza 2, and a general truth about the excluded in stanza 3. The structure narrows from observation to abstraction, from a particular perk to a universal paradox. In terms of form, the poem is actually, interestingly, a disguised Petrarchan sonnet. 14 lines broken into stanzas of 8, 3, and 3. Larkin takes the traditional form, the traditional sonnet used for love and spring poetry, and fractures it, splitting the usual sestet in 2. So instead of having a stanza of 8 and then a sestet, he has 8, 3, and 3. And finally, let's move on to rhythm. The bass meter here is iambic pentameter, giving the poem the steady pulse of the sonnet tradition. And the rhyme scheme runs A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D in the octave, and then E, F, F, G, E, G across the final 6 lines. And let us now conclude. The poem can really be summarized with 2 main themes. Our first theme is fertility against sterility. While spring is Earth's most multiple and excited daughter, alluding to reproduction and abundance, the speaker is an indigestible sterility. The season can't even absorb it, ingest it. He is an alien in this season. Our second theme is exclusion and the outsider. Despite him not having any use for spring, as the final paradox insists, the position of exclusion is exactly what allows him to see spring the best. And on that note, thank you for having listened to this poem analysis. Please like the video, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one.